The Stack, a podcast for IT and MSP professionals, with your host, David Papp.
Welcome to the MSP Stack Podcast. I'm your host, David Papp. We're joined today by Carrie Simpson-Richardson with Richardson & Richardson Consulting, based out of Michigan. Carrie runs an amazing lead gen business. Welcome, Carrie.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
You are like a black belt at lead gen and have assembled an amazing database which keeps you current. Tell us more about what you've mastered here.
Well, I mean, a lot of it was trial and error and accidental. Right? We didn't set out to create a rich data source for the managed services market. That was just a happy accident. But at the beginning, we were calling for MSPs. So an MSP would engage with us to help identify new opportunities for monthly recurring revenue with companies that had a minimum of 10 users, usually around a maximum of 100. I mean, as we matured as an organization, we swam upstream a little and worked with companies that were looking for co-managed opportunities as well. So the parameters around that were a little different. But we had a real epiphany moment when we realized that we'd been cold calling all of these MSPs to ask them for their business. And you would be surprised how much information people will share with you when they're trying to grow their business. So asking them about their technology stack wasn't improper at the time. It wasn't something that they were hiding. They were really invested in figuring out whether or not they had the right solutions before they embarked on trying to grow their sales. So vendors approached us and said, I bet you have a lot of relationships in the industry. Now, would you be open to the idea of, for a price, introducing us to the ones that we're not working with?
That's so awesome. I love how you fall into these things.
Skies just opened up and we had this moment where we realized, wow, the MSPs aren't the client, they're the product.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But the only way that it worked for us was to stay engaged on both sides of the channel. So in order to keep our database up to date and current, not only did we, call on behalf of 20 plus vendors at any given time, right, including OpenDNS right up until their exit to Cisco. Yep. We supported Cisco after that, which was a whole different animal entirely. We worked with Datto from, not quite Austin's basement days, but we worked with Datto very early on for about 5 years, generating about 100 partner meetings every month for them. So we took them right to unicorn status when we scheduled sales appointments. And when the MSPs showed up for the sales appointments, we got paid. And when they didn't, we didn't. So slowly but surely, we also began to aggregate information on who just wastes our time. Mm-hmm. Right? Which MSPs will accept a sales meeting and then never attend it, right? There's no point in even calling them anymore. So we not only had a database of 80,000 IT service providers in North America, we also knew which ones answered their phones, which ones reliably came to demos, which ones converted and how often, and at what what endpoint number are they more likely to evaluate a specific vendor over another? Which vendor is easiest to displace? And we learned so much over the last 10 years, and we just kept aggregating this information, analyzing it, and making our campaigns better and better.
Love it. So I'd love to dig a bit into your actual lead gen process, because most people I find, especially in this space, they're technical in nature. The sales part is a little difficult for some, and they usually grow from, referrals and with their existing client base and whatnot, but it's not something that they actively go out and do lead gen. That's like a foreign topic to many of them.
Yeah, that's when we realized how accurate that statement was, we just dropped every other company that we did lead gen for. So at the beginning, we weren't a managed services specific agency. And when we realized that most MSPs shared that problem, we were like, all right, this is a gold mine. This is all we do now. We don't support any other kind of company. We're going to learn the language of this industry, and we're going to crack the code on how to get new opportunities for them. So there are 3 different types of opportunities that come from a marketing generated campaign.
Okay.
So if you're used to a referral-based appointment, is like, hey, David, my buddy Joe is looking for a new IT company. Can you help him out? Right.
Yeah.
So you're 80% of the way there because I've already vouched for him.
Yeah. And the door's open.
You're going to sit down with him and it's theirs to lose at that point.
Yeah.
So it's a very different kind of meeting. It maybe needs to be qualified, but for budget or timeline or any of the things that you'd want to know before you went into a lengthy sales discovery process. But marketing generated leads are much more difficult to close. They take a whole lot longer to close. So if an IT company goes into a marketing generated sales appointment, assuming it's going to be the same type of appointment that they normally get from a referral, like that's why they're not able to convert, because they're going and expecting it to be like a slam dunk. And it's just the beginning of forming the relationship. So marketing generated leads fall into 3 different buckets. And the first one is there's been a price increase at my IT company and I don't know if I'm getting value. So I want to find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, so, and most of it's just dumb luck. You make enough phone calls, you find enough people, and you're only about 90 days away from hating your IT guy for something that is or is not their fault. But for example, my IT company sold me my fiber line back in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
That fiber line never got installed. And then our Wi-Fi was just horrific. Who do you think I blamed for that?
Absolutely.
Comcast? No, I blamed my IT company.
Yeah.
So if you called me, on yet another day where they hadn't installed the fiber line that was supposed to be in 90 days ago, of course I'm going to take that call. I'm mad at the company that sold it to me. Whether or not they're supporting it doesn't matter to me. As a business owner who doesn't understand IT, like, you sold me this thing and it should work.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about the sales cycle, everybody has IT support. So it's all displacement focused. You have to displace whoever is working with them currently to win the business. So that first price hike one, it isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's almost the easiest one to win because you can identify current state, desired future state, and gaps in the middle and build enough value that you can win the business, even if you're a little more costly. Right? The price is going up anyway. Are you getting what you're paying for? Do you want something better? And are you prepared to pay for something better? Right? That's an easy conversation.
You're listening to The Stack.
Special thanks to Pax8 for their support of The Stack. Pax8 empowers the modern MSP to buy, sell, and manage cloud products with automated provisioning, simplified billing, and free PSA integrations to more than 50 verified and vetted cloud service providers. Pax8 is ready to help you simplify your cloud business.
What's in your stack?
And then the second type of lead is, we got a guy, we've been with him a long time. We're not really getting what we believe we should be. Mm-hmm. And part of the challenge in there is like just expectation management at the beginning of the sales cycle. Mm-hmm. What you're promising companies as an IT or like as an MSP most of the time is IT that always works from anywhere, any device, anytime you want to access your data. It's amazing. It's going to be wonderful. But what you're actually selling them is IT that kind of works for the first 60 days and mostly works for another 90 until we figure out all your systems and processes and get everything running. So setting expectations up front is really important. Most companies don't do it well. So if I'm calling you 6 months into your current IT contract and you expected that everything's going to be sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns, and it's been nothing but garbage from day one, because probably I forgot to tell you something, right? Like it's not usually the IT company's fault, but the expectation alignment isn't there. I'm expecting that you're going to walk into my office, press a button, and my network's going to work like magic.
Yeah.
But that's how you're selling it to me, which is why I expect it to be like that. So setting that expectation at the beginning of the sales process is important. And if you're not doing it, it's really easy for your competitors to come in and say, what? Your IT's been crappy for the last 6 months? Why? Why are you tolerating that? Why are you putting up with that? They're going to do the exact same thing. And as somebody who has switched providers multiple times, I can tell you that it is better to work on the partnership you have than it is to switch partners, right? If I invest a little time with my IT company to help things work better, everything's going to get better. But instead, I get angry and it's combative all the time. So now you've got a stressed out IT team who's dealing with stressed out clients. Everybody hates the relationship. Mm-hmm. The MSP doesn't want to give up the revenue, and the client's angry that they're stuck in a contract and everything's just going poorly. So that's the second type of lead. So you can prevent that from happening to your client base by setting better expectations, and you can poach really easily from companies where you identify that they do not know how to onboard well. So the minute that you are on a discovery call and you find out that onboarding goes poorly for ABC Tech down the street, the first discovery question I'm ever going to ask on an outbound call is going to be, how was your onboarding? Oh, don't get me started about onboarding, right? Like, I just want to find all the things that they hate about their IT department and let them vent for the entire call. And then I'm going to ask them for an appointment.
Love it.
So that's the second type of marketing generated lead. But if you don't understand how to do an effective sales discovery, like if you don't understand how to take them from, here's what you're buying now, here's what we can do, here's all the stuff in the middle, and here's what it's going to look like at the end, right? If you can't do a proper sales discovery, you can't win marketing generated leads because you're expecting them to just roll up and sign the contract. You have to convince them that there's enough value there for them to even want to consider looking at your proposal. Like, never mind sign on the dotted line. And then you can't rush the process, which is part of the challenge that I think the IT industry as a whole has. Nobody's leaving their contract because they got a good sales call.
Yeah.
They're going to leave their contract if they are a reasonable, competent, operationally mature business. They're not leaving their IT contract early. They're not gonna leave unless there's a breach, and most contracts have breach remedy clauses too. So even if you point out to the potential client that their MSP might be in breach, the MSP now has 30 days to shore up everything you just pointed out. Right? So the sales cycle is super long, and it's just your job to be there and be a friendly face and a friendly voice. And how are things going? Prospecting is like babysitting. Right? You're just checking in all the time. What's going on there? Everything's still good? Right? You want to make them your buddy.
Yeah.
And then naturally, when it's time for contract renewal, you're going to get the opportunity to present. Right? But they're not there and you can't push them there any faster. But you need to be there because your competitors are kind of gunning for that lead as well. So if you drop the ball, you don't do your follow-up. So this is where the process comes in. If you're not following up on an appropriate cadence on a regular basis, and if you don't know when they're going to be discussing contract renewal and IT budgets, you can't really effectively process. So the first thing you need to do is collect data. You're not trying to gun for the CEO on the very first call. Whoever picks up the phone can tell you how many computers that company has. They can tell you how they get IT support. What do you do when something breaks? Who do you call? Oh, we just called Joe. Oh, okay. Well, does Joe work in your office or does Joe work at a company down the street? Oh, no, we outsource that. Right. So now you know they've got an outsourced provider. They've got 20 computers. Now you don't have to go to the CEO and have a dumb conversation like, how many computers do you have?
That's right.
Like, you have that conversation with anyone who'll have it with you. Identify all the moving pieces and the influencers in the sales process, right? Like, you don't want to go in bashing their current IT department if the CEO is married to the company, the person that owns the IT department. Like, can you imagine somebody coming in and bashing Doberman? Like, your IT department's terrible. I'm like, yeah, well, I'll be sure to let my husband know that. Thank you.
That's right.
So there's lots of things to think about in that process. And if you're not following a good step-by-step process, and I can't stress this enough, the reason you lose deals is that you don't do what the prospect asks you to. If the prospect says, call me on Thursday, you call them on Thursday.
That's right.
And I'm sorry that your client's server blew up and you didn't have time to make your follow-up phone calls, but you lost that to a competitor because the competitor did what they asked them and you didn't.
That's right.
Like imagine prospecting, taking it like 2 years along the line. You're waiting for that 3-year contract renewal. You stayed in touch with them. You stayed in touch with them. You stayed in touch with them. And then you drop the ball. You just on one day, you drop the ball. You're like, yeah, I'm going to go golfing today. I'm not going to make my follow-up calls. One of your competitors calls. Most of the time, companies don't remember what the name of the IT company that they're interacting with is. And I can't tell you how often that happens. They know they're talking to an IT company. They didn't go look at your website. They remember maybe David's name, but they don't remember that David works for ABC IT Co.
Yeah.
So they're talking to this person. They're expecting the call. Your competitor just got super, super lucky because you just decided you didn't feel like doing your job that day. All right. So the third type of marketing generated lead that is most common, and I actually didn't even know this one until Ian and I partnered up to run R&R, was staff changeover, right? There's a new person coming into the organization. This is especially prominent in health services companies, right? So somebody new comes in to manage the office. Mm-hmm. That's when you're going to get the call, right? Like they're not sure if they like this IT company. Maybe they want to bring in the company they worked with at their last firm. But if you can catch them at the right time when they're evaluating what they want to do differently versus what they inherited, you can win that lead as well. So those are the 3 types of leads that we focus on.
Love it. So one thing that we like to focus on at the end of a lot of our podcasts is sort of like this power tip. It's like this one thing. So if they were listening to all of this and it's all news to them, what's the one thing, the one tip that you would suggest that people remember?
First point of contact qualification. Right? If you're taking on the burden of outbound calling, remember that you're only going to get lucky about 1 out of every 200 calls. So don't get frustrated when, day 1, nobody talks to you, or day 2, nobody talks to you. But when the person on the other end of the phone picks up the phone, don't waste the opportunity to qualify the lead. So it takes about 17 calls to get somebody on the phone to begin with. If it takes 200 to 300 calls to get a meeting, if you're chasing down leads that were never qualified to begin with, you can burn 3/4 of your sales week just pursuing leads that you had no business calling to begin with. So qualify as quickly as you can. Whoever picks up the phone, how many computers do they have? Right? Otherwise, you just spent 4 hours of your sales time. And as a business owner, you might only have 8 hours a week to do this. Are you spending half of that time chasing down leads that have 3 computers and like a printer that doesn't work sometimes? Like, that's not the lead you want. So don't waste your time chasing those leads. Find out right away whether or not this is something that you want to keep pursuing.
Love it. That is solid advice. Well, thank you very much for being interviewed on our show here and telling us about your processes and the qualifications, and actually some super solid tips that people should remember. Appreciate your time.
No, it was great. Thanks, David. I'll talk to you again soon.
You bet, Carrie. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the MSP Stack Podcast. Remember, if you liked it, hit thumbs up. If you didn't like it, hit thumbs down twice. If you'd like to be on the show, head on over to the MSPstack.com and click on the Be a Guest button. The Stack is made possible through the generous support of MSP Corp. What's in your stack?